Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Lit versus Genre. I am Steve,
And I am Jeff.
and we are moving on to Chapter 7, Eye of the World. Coming out of these woods, Jeff. We're coming out of these woods, finally.
Yep. It's funny, in my memory of it, I thought he was in the woods a lot longer. But it's really it's like kind of the one chapter before, and then we're out pretty soon from this one.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah,
that might be that thing in, the way time works in
right,
in fiction. Like, he was in the woods for a long time in
right.
reality, but in the book, it was just that little chapter.
Yeah, I didn't feel it got to the place of like boredom or too much description personally. But we're here to hear your reactions and then have me refute them. So please, so
Well,
that's the whole purpose.
Well, not just you, Jeff. Not just you. I want to give a little shout out before we start here to our dedicated commenters. One
Yes.
commenter in specific, I want to give a shout out to Scott, who has commented on every single one of our videos so far, and that
Thank you, Scott.
so amazing. I really want to give a big shout out to Scott. We also recently got Robin do a couple comments in there, and keep them coming, y'all. Keep them
We love
coming.
seeing him. We really do.
Yeah, especially the ones coming at me, and let me know where I'm wrong. Please let me know where I'm wrong. But I wanted, before we dive into this chapter, I wanted to talk about a little bit about some things that came up in the comments. Now,
Sure.
one thing this is going to give away is that we are recording ahead, because I will be referring back to some comments from like 2 videos ago. So I guess that's like giving away the magic a little bit. But Jeff and I do record ahead a little bit to make sure that we always hit
Just
releasing
a
one of
touch.
these once a week. Yeah, just a touch. Just a touch. We're just like 3 weeks ahead or something right here. But I wanted to go back to some comments on, there was I guess it's the Strangers chapter, right? Before the Gleeman chapter?
Hmm.
No. I forget what it was called.
Now I'm researching.
Yeah. I think I'm referring to
Stra-
chapter 4 here.
Strangers is before the peddler.
Peddler. Yeah, so that was the chapter, I think, where both Robin and Scott commented that they weren't sure what kind of lit that I actually read.
That's a
If
good
I was so
question.
confused during this chapter. Yeah, and I mean, I wanted to talk about it because it's going to bring me to another point here, Jeff, that I want to bring up with you,
Oh, all right.
because I feel like there's some co-host malpractice that you have done to me here, and I'm gonna show you this
Uh,
co-host malpractice. But I
bring it.
guess I guess
Bring
the
it.
thing that I wanted to talk about here was maybe like, and we've talked about this a few times in the podcast, but maybe
Mhm.
the difference between like what you are getting out of rereading
Mhm.
something that is more literary. Like Scott brought up, I forget the litany of authors he brought up, but he brought up like Steinbeck, Hemingway, I can't, I think Homer in
Mhm.
there at some point, and versus the sort of rereading, or I guess more the information that's being held back from you in this, and from what I'm
Mhm.
getting from
Mhm.
you in a lot of fantasy novels, sort of on purpose, as
Mhm.
a way of exploring a world, or being like introduced to a world. And my argument
Mhm.
is that anything else literary that I've read, because I've read all those authors that Scott mentioned, and never at one moment during any of those did I feel confused, or did I feel like I didn't have key pieces of information as I was going through and reading those. Like, I never felt lost. So yeah, and I guess that's the thing that I wanted to talk about. That, like, when we talk about foreshadowing, or when we talk about not having everything given to you,
Sure.
I feel like it's very different in those sort of things. Like, so for example, I haven't read much Homer. I read the Iliad. I didn't read the Odyssey.
Mhm.
I read the Iliad. At no point in the Iliad, and this is, a time period well removed from
Mhm.
my everyday life.
Right.
At no point did I feel confused about like who the two sides were, what they were fighting about, why Achilles is pissed off and refusing to fight, or
Mhm.
just the basic facts on the ground. I mean, that thing, if you read it, it
Mhm.
is basically like, I remember reading at the time thinking this is just like a literary Jerry Bruckheimer movie, basically. It's like one long action scene. It's battle after battle after battle, like never ending. I
Mhm.
also remember like it was incredibly gory, probably like the goriest thing I've ever read, and so in other words, awesome.
Right.
But
Obviously, translate to awesome.
but there was at no point was I the least bit confused, and so I feel like this is a very different phenomenon than things that I typically would be categorized as more literary type things.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And I also feel like, Robin brought up another comment that on the next chapter, the Gleeman,
Mhm.
and this is what I feel like is the literary version of not being given this information or coming back to it later. She pointed out that Len in the stars, and I'm sorry, I might be gendering Robin. I'm not sure. I might very well be misgendering Robin, but Robin pointed out that Len in the stars was an allusion to John Glenn orbiting, being the first person in space or first man in space,
Mhm.
American, I guess, in space. And then that his daughter was an allusion to the first, I believe, American woman in space. And I
Mhm.
was like, that's very interesting. I had no idea about that. And that to me felt like a literary allusion. That to me felt like, okay, this is the sort of thing that, then people go back and write dissertations on Shakespeare about or whatever. It's like these allusions to other things that you may or may not pick up on depending on what you've read or what you're paying attention to as you're reading. But that is not at all necessary for me to understand what's going on in the actual scene.
Mhm.
Whereas knowing whether that is an adventure story or a funny story in that scene is key piece of information for me to understand what's going on in that scene, if that makes sense.
No, I hear what you're saying. Well, because one is referring to potentially, well, as Robin is saying, real world counterparts, right? That adds to your enjoyment if you're aware of the nod that the author is sort of like giving that. I mean, I suppose we could also say that it's meant to indicate that this is Earth potentially,
Mm,
and that the ages past were, our age now, right? And the
right.
wheel of time turns. So, I mean, it does create that as a possibility, right? Especially like, it is fascinating because that's something I wasn't aware of, and I was just rereading that line about Len riding the moon in a belly of an eagle made of fire, and that
Right.
does sound a bit like a rocket ship for
Yeah.
sure, which I never knew about.
An
So,
eagle American flag or,
right,
symbolism,
right,
that
so
sort of
completely, and then
stuff.
the lance of fire that could reach around the world. So yeah, no, that's very fascinating. So I think what you're saying there is like that is clear as written, like as written just from a story perspective. We're like, oh, we're reading about or hearing some teller of tales talk about various tales that exist in the world, and I don't need to know what those are. I'm not
Yeah.
supposed to know what those are.
Right.
And like that's like a moment in a story where you're like, I get that there could maybe be more meaning here, but it's not something that I'm supposed to necessarily know, but I could know with deeper analysis. Versus things that feel like they are being like purposely hidden for you or not fully described in the moment, right?
Yes.
And that's what you're making the distinction between. Yeah.
Yes. And like I also think there's this kind of notion that something having literary value means that you hear this sentence a lot, like have to work for it, quote unquote, have to work for it, or that it's somehow difficult on some level, so you can't have this sort of breezy time reading it. Like you have to really be putting a lot of effort in, and doing the thing you're kind of talking about, flipping back pages, checking out things that were going on before. And I'm just going to say that is sort of not at all my experience with the literature I've read. That there are very few times. Now there are some writers who I don't particularly care for, but that do kind of do that sort of thing. Like you could say Thomas Pynchon, for example. I could not even make it through a chapter of Gravity's Rainbow, and maybe this says more about me than about in my literary tastes. Maybe literature is supposed to be hard, but other things like Bronte is not at all difficult to read, or at least Charlotte is not. Emily, I think her writing's a little janky in places, but Charlotte Bronte, super easy to read. Jane Austen, super easy to read. Tolstoy, super easy to read. Like, again, because they give you all the information. They're providing you the context you need to follow. And then what is literary then is the allegory or the metaphor or the illusion or all that extra layering that you don't need in the moment to follow that story. Yeah. And so I just feel like there's a little bit of a difference there that I wanted to pull out. Even something like Nabokov, who I'm a really big fan of, and I kind of want to like force Lolita on you because I'm fascinated on like what
I knew that was next. I knew what I was getting into when you agreed to read Eye of the World. I was like, wait a second, he's gonna read this like 400-page book. I know what's in my future. When it's in my future, it's read Lolita, right? Actually, what am I talking about? 400 pages? It's way longer than that. But the point is, yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine.
But even something like that, he has, the one that came into my brain is at one point there's just this list of students in her class. And it's like literally just a list of names of students in the class. And it wasn't until like I got the annotated version of the novel, which there is a novel with monster annotations going throughout the whole thing, that you learn that each of these different names is like in a different allusion to something, or some alluding to something that's going to come up later on in the novel. Nabokov loves these little games, so I'm certainly aware of those. But then again, in that moment, it doesn't matter. I'm not confused about anything. If I don't catch every allusion in this long list. And I think he's very cognizant of that. I've read lots of Nabokov, and I've never been confused or unsure of something going through. So and all of this I'm saying really to bring this back around to the malpractice that I
was waiting for it. I was wondering where, as we get out of these woods and into the malpractice suit, I want to.
Well, and I maybe gave you a little clue, huh? I maybe gave you a little clue as to what I think the malpractice was, because my friend. Let's bring it up here. Arrow over. What is this, Jeffrey? What is this? I'll tell you what this is. This is the thing that explains everything. Of course, I can't click on it for some reason.
So the thing about a glossary is that they can contain spoilers.
Oh, they do. They quite contains spoilers.
Exactly. That is why you will notice that this particular glossary is placed at the end of the book
Well,
for a point of reference after the fact.
that is typically
Whereas,
where glossaries are
well,
placed, right?
true. But a lot of other fantasy novels will have dramatis personae listing, much like a play
Okay.
will, and that'll be at the front of the book, which will not contain spoilers and will simply tell you who people are, where you may have met them, how they were related to each other, that type of thing. Um, but yes,
Well, this
so
brings up
that
a big question, though, in my
right.
mind about
Mm-hmm.
what is AKA a spoiler. Because I think you might feel like things are spoilers that, and this is going to be bold, is a bold
Maybe,
statement, that maybe
maybe,
Jordan does not consider a spoiler.
maybe.
In other words, my thinking now is that when we get something like I said I dropped there and the characters just
Mm-hmm.
kind of talk about it like they know what they're talking about. So when they say, you know what kind of women he's talking about, I of course don't. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you could piece it together. But I kind of think what might be happening is that Jordan rightfully does not want to load down all of this with exposition.
Right.
So he wants
Exactly.
to write it in a way that the characters can just say it. Reader may not understand what they're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
but that's okay because I can go right over here and just read the entry on the wait, where are they? Wait, where did they
Oh
go?
wait, I just realized that there's a pronunciation key for.
Oh yes, my friend. That was the other
Oh
thing
wow,
that I believe is another reason why I sort of think you're
Egwene.
supposed to
Oh,
come
it is
back here.
Egwene. It is Egwene. Look at that.
And
Look
now
at
I
that.
know it's Nynaeve with the emphasis on the
Nynaeve.
nigh.
Nynaeve.
Okay, so that was the other thing that I'm like, am I really not supposed to be coming back here and looking at this stuff? I kind of don't think so. So here's
Well,
Aes Sedai right here. Welder's the one power since time of madness. All surviving Aes Sedai are women, widely distrusted and feared, even hated. They're blamed by many in the breaking world. Now, is this a spoiler? I don't know if I would say that's a spoiler unless you're into the game of going, ooh, tell me this word. I'm excited to hear about what this word means in the future. I want to try to piece it together the way you really like to do. But
true.
I don't know if Jordan, that was his intent necessarily, because he puts it right here for me to be able to take a look at it.
He
Even Wilder,
does.
very quickly, we get basically an explanation of the whole entire prologue in this. When you look at like either of those dudes' names, okay, breaking of the world, boom, it's all here, right? What the counterstroke is that I was so confused about.
They do.
That about the madness, about that he went mad. I could go to Luz's entry and check that out and now be completely clear on what happened in that prologue that I was utterly lost in. So this is making me think, that this is what I'm supposed to have been doing this whole time, and you did
Mm,
not tell me.
I don't know. I don't know about that. Like, I see your points. I can see where you're coming from with this malpractice through throw it in my direction. However, I want to point out that I think it's a matter of preference. I think that's the important thing,
Sure.
which is that, as you've already pointed out, for me, the joy is that that information is there. That, I mean, we can figure out about the Aes Sedai. We will learn what the counterstroke is. Like, these things will come in time,
Right.
and in a decent amount of these, they can be intuited from the text, as we talked about. So, like, to me, the word cheating is on the tip of my lips
Ah,
with this to
but
look at
he
this
put it in here.
glossary.
I'm not. This is in
And
your first edition, right? This isn't an edition like
well,
later
that's actually
on.
that's what I just checked. I just checked the old book I've got, and
Mm,
it is all there. It's
yeah.
all there. So because I was like, wait a second, is this just in the third? But no, it's been there from the beginning. I know that his wife had put together, or I don't know if he, well, it was from his notes, obviously, but there is a whole book of like words and definitions and like power levels of different ICI, like tons and tons of information that does exist. But this one at the end is also quite extensive, as you already noticed. Um, yeah, I think it's just preference. I think, if you are someone that wants to know right away what things are referring to, the glossary is there. I think in my mind, Robert Jordan is there is putting it so either group could be satisfied. So if you wanted to go and know these things, you could, but if you didn't, you could wait. In my experience, glossaries do tend to contain spoilers, and that is why I tend not to use them
Mm.
personally. Um,
But again, you think
yeah,
he would, decide. There's obviously
sure.
choices going on here, and I utterly fail to believe that this glossary, which isn't that long, I don't know how many pages that we
No,
have
it's,
here,
it's not massive, but I
but
mean, it is thorough, I think.
yeah, yeah. But I don't know. I didn't even know this existed, and it certainly was something that he is giving you access to. And it
It
also
is true.
it also kind of brings up a debate about the idea of spoilers, because a thing that
Mhm.
I find fascinating about you and what you're reading for is that you're reading to have these basic facts revealed, and that's
Right,
exciting to you. Whereas,
right.
like, a spoiler that I would be really mad about would be like, oh, Egg and Rand got together and they had the best sex of their lives, and but then they had to break up later because
Right.
Rand was too jealous. You know what I'm saying? Like that would be, I would be like, oh, whoa, glossary, whoa. But I don't feel like this glossary is doing anything like that at any point. As far as our main characters, what we get is
Yeah,
we
I
get a
have to.
pronunciation and we get like who they are, and that's all.
Yeah, I'd have to read through and see if there is. Like, I would definitely need to double check this to be able to say for sure. To me, yeah, yeah, I think it gets back. It's fascinating conversation because it does get back to what I believe is potentially, without even realizing it, the right way to read
Mm,
fantasy, right? Or at least my way
mm,
of reading fantasy, which is like this is the cheat sheet at the end. You can double check and see if you were right
mm.
as you're reading through. Right? This would be like checking your work before you finish. In my viewpoint, um, and I
And to
think that
me,
does.
this would be the stuff that is exposition that you don't want to put in, that you could just get
Right.
out of the way, because it's not really the stuff that's going to be that interesting or
Right.
exciting.
Well, and I would say too that like, this allows the person to decide when they want the exposition done, right? Which I
Mm,
think is, smart. If someone does want to front load all the information, Jordan has provided it and it is there. So you are right. I should have told you that this existed from the beginning. I completely forgot that it was in this book. Like I knew about the book because I've been meaning to buy the book that's the huge glossary. But I completely forgot that the book, like the first book itself, contained a glossary within it. Obviously, I mean, we're even having that conversation about, how to pronounce Egwene, and the answer is like literally in the book,
yeah.
right? Like Jordan gave it to me, but I had no idea because I don't read glossaries. Because, as I said, of my personal viewpoint.
No spoilers.
Um, now I kind of want to like check and see how big of spoilers there are. I'd have to
Yeah, that would
go
be
back and find
interesting.
like
Because
like what book did I read that gave me spoilers that I was like never again. never again shall I read a glossary. Like, this way until like I finish the entire
Oh, that's
series, perhaps.
interesting. Yeah, the one
So
that broke you of
yeah, what
glossaries.
glossary broke me? What glossary revealed too much? And it seriously might have been as simple as me just reading anything. Like me
uh,
reading like the part you were talking about
well,
the
that's what I'm
counterstroke and being like,
saying.
whoa.
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to know I want to figure that out. You need to reveal that to me
Right.
through the story. I don't want to have to go read a shorthand entry. That's cheating as, a reader, as an author. Um, at least in my, younger viewpoint thinking that
Right.
perhaps.
Right. And it brings up an
Fascinating. No, this
interesting.
is fascinating
It
for
does bring
sure.
up an interesting thing, man, because okay, so here's a word that does show up in this chapter
It
today
does.
that
It
is
does.
not remotely explained, it's just dropped.
Oh yeah.
But, and again, I did actually read ahead a little bit last night because I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
told you I hadn't read the next chapter, but I decided to
Mm-hmm.
read a little bit. And then there is some exposition on this thing. So
Mm-hmm.
like I guess that would be the checklist. Like could you
Right.
once the book is done go back to every single one of these things and be
Right.
like all of this was revealed, was talked
Yeah.
about or not so. So that would be interesting.
I also feel like, yeah, then it could get repetitive because I was going to say you're going to learn about Angriel later on or Angriel later
Mhm.
on.
Mhm.
Now I got to check the pronunciation. But so if you read it ahead, I mean, again, like I know there are people read for different reasons and people have different pleasures. Like my mother, she can read the end of a book and it's fine. For me, like it would break me. Like I can't. Like she doesn't care. She's like, man, I want to see how they got there. I don't mind knowing where the story ends at all. Like I could tell her the end of the movie and she's perfectly happy to watch it. So I realize
That's
that people
wild, dude. My
have,
mom's the exact same way. She reads the last
but
page or the
yeah,
last chapter of her book and then goes back and reads the rest of the book. And I was
right.
like, that's
Well,
the craziest thing I've ever heard.
well, I think at a certain point, I think there can be different reasons for it, right? One is that like, is this going to be worth it, right? I don't want to ever spend all this time to read a book
But how do
and then
you
get an ending that
know?
I don't want. You know what I mean?
How do you even judge though whether
I
that's
know,
the
I
ending
know.
you
Like,
want?
well, I think this recording maybe holds our glossaries. Why do we read and everything, as opposed to out of the woods. But what I would say to that is that um, that gets into romance, where romance, there's, at least for a lot of the books, there is an inherent promise that these people end up together. And if there's a romance book that someone reads where they don't, people can be up in arms. And obviously there can be subcategories where they don't, but the inherent promise to you picking up and reading a romance book is they will end up together. And so I think
That's so
people could
funny.
potentially be happening for checking for happy endings, that type of thing. Um,
Yeah, but happy endings are bad.
well, so yeah, I think that this gets into why do people read. I think having the glossary is really smart because if someone's like, I don't understand any of this, you're right. You could just go check and be like, what are all these crazy words? Who are these people that are being dropped?
Yeah.
And boom, they're right here. Yeah.
All right. The last thing I wanted to point out here in this glossary was I feel like this is Superman reference number 2 right here that I just wanted to point out. See, I catch some references. If they're about comic
There,
books, I could catch
there you
them.
go. There it is.
But I wonder
Uh,
if there's like some more. I don't know. I wonder if there was like some influence or something. It seems like there seems to be some Superman callbacks, but
I am looking through this too, and I will say it does seem relatively safe.
right. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what I thought kind of looking over it. Like, I didn't feel like there were
yeah,
plot points being dropped. There's this history, which,
yeah.
obviously is going to be important to the rest of the story, but like nothing like
Mhm.
Tam dies or something, right? Like, there's no,
Well,
well, let's look at Tam's.
the one that I was really, yeah, damn that. The one I was really looking at was Lan, because
Mm.
in the chapter we're reading, it is revealed that Lan is a warder, right?
Oh, I thought we
But
knew that. I thought they used that word earlier. Maybe I'm wrong.
no, because we didn't also know that Moraine is an Aes Sedai.
We didn't know
And
that,
so,
no.
right,
So
exactly.
we couldn't have
So,
known he was a warder. Again, I don't know what that word means.
yeah, we
Well,
couldn't
let's
because
look up.
warders work for Aes Sedai.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So like if we even check if we check Moraine right now, would hazard a guess, since Land's entry did not say he was a warder, that
Oh
her
shoot.
entry would not say that she is
Yeah.
right.
Look how
Yeah, a visitor. Yeah,
non-spoilery
a
this is.
visitor in Edmondsfield. Okay.
That makes me
Fair.
think he is keenly aware of what's a spoiler and what's
Yeah.
not a spoiler, and that his definition of
Mhm.
spoiler is a lot
Right.
less so than your
No,
definition of spoiler.
so I think it means, yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
I'm reading the glossary from now on. That's what I'm saying. I'm on to this
Boom, there it
glossary.
is.
All
Well,
right.
does that mean props to Jordan then? That Jordan is providing this info for readers such as you. Do you
Yeah,
appreciate
I,
this
I,
thought?
yeah, and that's why I say it's you committed
Right.
malpractice here because I feel like this is necessary. I feel like
Okay. Okay.
this is the sort of thing that this is the information is not driving me in the way that it drives you. Like
Right.
learning
Right.
this because this seems like just I, I got it. It sounds belittling to say just background. I think it's
Sure.
amazing to have a big, rich background to your world and have
Right.
this
Right.
sense that there's history to it, that's very enriching. Slowly uncovering all that history, though, is
Mhm.
less sort of fascinating to me, right? Like I'm not
Mhm.
it, and again, maybe another big difference between a genre reader and a literary reader, though. I mean, it's kind of crappy for us to even draw like really sharp lines between them.
Oh, we're drawing those lines. They're complete. I'm joking.
But this idea of
Sort of.
lore being important, right? Like,
Mhm.
so let's get even more controversial here because
Bring it.
I like courting it. Let's talk about Star Wars for a second.
Oh.
I don't think
Okay.
you need to know any of that nonsense that people drive themselves crazy over, in
Oh
that
yeah. No.
original series. And like, yeah, Lucas
No. No.
drops
Not at
like a
all.
ton of stuff, like Clone Wars. Did we need to know what the Clone Wars were?
No.
Absolutely not. Doesn't even matter. It's a funny word for Alex Guinness to be able to say, in that scene. And like, fans tie themselves up in knots or get super duper invested in stuff that I feel like, especially for original trilogy, does not matter. I could not care less, and that's my favorite series of movies
Well,
ever.
I feel like.
Clearly, it's not for the reasons of the lore, of the history of the Jedi or the Sith or the whatever
Sure.
nonsense.
Sure.
Like I just cannot bring myself to care, whereas a lot of people really do, right? And I'm not saying one is
True.
right or one is wrong, but it's just again illustrative of that very interesting difference between what
Mhm.
people are reading or watching for when it comes to these
Right.
sort of stories.
Well, I think Star Wars, I mean, I'm going to hazard a guess and say I feel like you could count the number of like non-obvious words that are used on, two
Right.
hands.
Probably, yeah.
Maybe including your toes as well. Like, I don't think there's nearly the same number that you've got in something like this, right?
Right.
Well, and also in a movie, a picture 1,000 words, exists for a reason. That's saying because you can just see what's going on.
Mm.
You don't need to hear the names of things or for the name to be as confusing because you get to see it, right? I mean, we get
Right.
to see the sand people like this. We get to see the what are the Jawas, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get to see them. We get to see their what is it? Their sand. It's got a
Who
name, sand
knows?
thing. Anyway,
Sand
but the
thing.
point is,
I
it's
think
like
you nailed it. Sound thing. Yeah.
uh,
Mr.
sand
Sword.
traveling fortress that sells things for discount rates. We can just boom, sand crawler. I think it was. We see it. You know what I'm saying? And so like even if there is a word that's funky or weird, you just immediately get this picture of it, right? Um, so I think that has, whereas that has an effect, whereas in a book it's taking up real estate, right? And we keep
Mm-hmm.
going back to this idea of Jordan, as well as I think a lot of effective fantasy writers, do not want to spend the real estate to reveal all this stuff to you, but then they also want people to talk in a natural way about this world they're living in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like finding that sweet spot between, okay, we're going to drop some stuff you don't really know about, because that's how people would talk in this world where there's a lot of stuff you don't know about because you're just coming in.
Right. And
But,
I mean, I appreciate this approach, I
mm,
think, plus glossary, because
mm, mm,
kind of being fed that stuff through the narrative just feels clunky as all get out, and would be
mm,
like, I would probably immediately put it down if you're not giving me the character
right,
stuff, if I'm not getting what the character's problem is, what the motivations
exactly.
are, like that's what I want the real estate to be taken up with.
Yeah, because if we imagine the prologue and you knew what the 100 companions were and you knew what, the counterstroke was. I mean, again, sure, it could be argued maybe some of that stuff could be in there, but like there's a paragraph about that one power that we just, went by when we were looking at the glossary and stuff. And so, that would all affect the pacing of that very sort of like crazy, insane, what is happening prologue,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, but then we also see, as we talk about for the new release, that then you got this Ravens chapter, because it does seem like they are trying to deal with it. Because I think if we take the prologue out of the running and we just started with Rand walking with his father, I think that is very digestible. That isn't quite as crazy. I'm sure, as we've talked about, who is, how old is Rand? Will we ever find out? Like where did he get the second, axle, like the axle, but like
Yeah,
posts from the carriers
that could have been
finally.
here in the glossary. Just be like 18-year-old
Right,
son
Rand, 18.
of, maybe son of, because we don't want
You will
to.
never know.
I also like how. Do you think this was on
Right.
purpose, having everybody's last name in Two Rivers be Al something, so that we can put
Mm,
them all at the beginning of the glossary?
that is a fun thing, but
I guess
or
that's
even
not true, because there are other
yeah,
ones
it's
that
another
aren't
one. Yeah,
Al's.
Cawthon,
Yeah,
but they are pretty early on, right?
yeah.
Because they're not all owls. We do
Yeah.
have Ibera versus Cawthon, right? But yeah, yeah.
Funny.
Well, one, I think this is amazing that obviously we get to talk about this, and I did completely betray you by not. I'll come to that. I should have, if I had known that this glossary existed, I'm sure I would have mentioned it. But due to my preconceived notions of how one should read a
I
fantasy
love it.
novel, I have erased that from my memory that this glossary existed.
That
In
is
this
so
book, in this
funny.
book.
That is so funny.
I want to say, I think in one of our earlier videos, I may have said that there was a book where all the words were right.
Yeah. You did say that.
In my defense, and that I would like to own it.
I don't
Yeah, I
even know
completely.
why I saw this. I must have just like clicked on
It's amazing.
something, and like when you go to the table of contents, I don't even see it because it doesn't make it on the first
Right,
page
the
of the
200
table of
chapters,
contents.
right?
And like
Yeah,
somehow I was like,
then you were like, wait a
what?
second.
What?
Wait a second.
Amazing. Okay, let's get.
Cool.
This is gonna be a really long,
Well,
cast
I
now. So
wondered
let's.
you were here. Should this would just be called Jeff Betrays? All right.
All right, let's get into this one, which I think there are, yeah. Then so as far as like mysteries, genuine mysteries that aren't being
Sure.
given away by the glossary, I think we get into things in here again. Who's Team Dark One? Who's Team Heroes? I think we get some more indication that Nynaeve is not being completely on the up and up with us. The Gleeman, I'm a little bit more unsure about after reading this one, because like part of me is like, what is going on with this dude? Part of me thinks maybe he is on the side of the angels. I'm not sure, but okay, and I do want to get points for predicting that the town was wrecked. And I did not read ahead when I made that prediction in that last
No,
video.
no, well done. Well done.
So I caught that. Okay, going through here, not a lot. I mean, I read the sentence "dark circles." I was like, man, did somebody like punch her in both eyes? But she's just tired, so
Yeah.
that's cool. I liked this because this is a thing that I feel like is super real. Notice
Yeah.
odd details as if they were very important, and it just struck a chord. It's a nice sentence, and like I have felt that in my own life of times of stress or trauma, like just having this like slowed down feeling and like weird unimportant details suddenly seeming like they take on some significance. So I just wanted to call that out, as I liked it a lot.
Well, what I'm impressed by in this is that I think in a lot of, it's almost become a trope that, slow down because scary or whatever. But what I liked is that these details also made sense, right? So like, it's one thing to say notice small details if they're important, which I do agree is a really great line. And I think shows that Jordan understands how it feels to be in a traumatic situation, or at least how to express it in writing. But then the sentences make sense afterward. That, of course, the buttons are done up crookedly because she was in a rush because things were attacked, probably maybe changed clothes. Why her hands clean becomes this little mystery, right? And then it is revealed later on. So I feel like it's just, it all does tie and make sense as well. Yeah. It's not like he just mentions her hair is snagged and then that's it. Like there's nothing else to it. Right.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so this sentence I just thought was a little clunky. Master Luhan was right, he thought, and was surprised that he was not surprised by what he saw. Nah, I'm not into it. I mean, I can see what he's trying to do with that sentence, but I'm not into it. Okay, so, and then here's where we... Sorry, what?
Well, right before that, above that, I feel like this is so important. Master Luhan, kind of going down that like life is tough moment, and then ping-ponging off of it and being like, we're Two Rivers folk, we're gonna take care of this. We pick ourselves back up. Because I feel like there's sometimes you'll see, I'll back up. Oftentimes when people are talking about, what fantasy books to read, Jordan gets dropped, of course. But what I find interesting is that sometimes you'll see posts like on Reddit and whatnot where people say, hey, here's something I noticed about like a fantasy book that like helped me in life. And so not too long ago, there was someone posting about using the flame technique that was talked about in this book, where the void, where you imagine a flame and put all kind of your emotion into it and you center yourself, as a way to deal with like trauma, stress, depression, stuff like that, and how it really helped this individual. And then other people are responding as well, saying it helped with their mental health as well. For me, this paragraph that Luhan does is very much what resonates, and I don't know if it came from here or not. I don't think so, but this might have emphasized it. This is very much something that I believe in life, about the importance of, yes, we want to take time to accept when something bad has happened, but we also want to move forward from it, and look at the good, or pick yourself up. So I think that there's also something to be said about kind of the life lessons that can potentially be taught, and obviously any form of art that exists. But I think what this story does for Two Rivers is something or Two Rivers people, is something that readers could glom onto and take for themselves beyond just reading the book.
Yeah, right on. Now, Jeff, you know how I feel about lessons from fiction.
Well, let's say life. No, I mean,
no, that's what you're saying. Now, if the whole book comes out at the end to be about having taught me this lesson, I will throw it into the fire once again. After like Rand and Egg don't get together, I will also throw it into a fire. But no, that's, you need multiple copies of the book. That's actually funny. I think that's a good pitch you should think about making, right? The self-help book, Wheel of Time self-help book. It could be a big seller, buddy. You should. There it is. There it is.
There was something. Oh, that's what it was. After my wife read this first book, or even she maybe was a couple books into the series, she was like, I now understand why you are the way you are. And I'm like, what does that mean? No, but she's right. I was like, okay, yeah, no, I get you now. Like, I see it.
I'm really excited. Please ask her like exactly at what point that happens, because I want to know as well.
Fair enough. We'll have to get on here in a future session. Yes. She has many opinions about this series.
Well, she's gonna come on. We had it planned that she's gonna come on.
Yeah, we do.
So that'll be awesome. I will have to ask her about that.
Yeah, you should. When was the moment?
Jeff was suddenly revealed to you through the Wheel of Time. Okay, so moving on here, we go to Nynaeve. Nynaeve's like, I can't help him. Right,
Right.
of course. I was like, of course she can. I just,
Were you saying of course because the difficulty involved, or do you think
no,
that?
because then I also was like, oh, somebody's gonna help. Like I guess I didn't like guess Moraine would be the one
Mhm.
to help him, but like I was like, yeah, I don't think it's gonna end right there. Also, that she like doesn't let him see the wound. Now that could
Mhm.
just be because it's so horrible or something that
Mhm.
she wants to, keep him from the trauma of seeing it or something. But I mean, he's already seen it. I don't know. It just felt a little sketch to me. I'm just putting that in the list of things about
Oh, that she
Nynaeve.
like didn't really give it much time, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that she replaced it with the wadded cloth before Rand could see.
Mhm.
So like there's a few ways you could look at that. Like she didn't really give it much of a look, I guess. Like if
Mhm.
it was like boom
Right.
boom, and maybe she doesn't need to because she knows what this thing is instantly and what it means. But I also thought that was weird before Rand could see what lay underneath. It felt like hiding something the way that sentence
Mhm.
is written. Now, do I know that? No, but it's just something. And I already have my radar up about Nynaeve. I don't trust her at all. I think she's Team Dark One. So I was a little put off by
Gotcha.
that.
I got it. I got you.
I like that part where Egg hugs Rand. Did I highlight it?
Yep.
Maybe not.
Cannoning into him.
Yes, yes. Like about to walk away because she's got to go help save other
Right.
people, and then she turns around. I'm a sucker.
Yep.
I'm a sucker for that shit. So I liked it. I have highlighted here the only thing left are the person-sized wheels.
Yep.
Oh, Jeff, is this like the most tragic part of this chapter for you?
No, I mean, if something was gonna survive,
That's
it's
true.
that,
That's
right?
true. Okay, so then he's like, I'm gonna take them to Bran here because
Right.
this is Bran's gonna help me out if you don't
Well,
help
and
me
also
out.
what it shows is that Rand is from the two rivers. That just like Luhan and the other people picked himself up, he picked himself up, right? And is like stubborn about like, no, I'll figure out a way. So we get some
All
character from him
right,
as well
that's
there.
interesting. I don't know if I would say that's like the same lesson necessarily because like I feel like what Luhan's kind of saying is like okay we let go of this tragedy and we start rebuilding from it.
Mm.
Whereas this is very much holding on what Rand is doing,
True.
like not letting go right here to like a large degree.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the letting go component is that there or not. To me, it's more about like not giving up, pushing forward, that type of
That's
thing.
interesting.
Um, but I hear what you're saying. That it doesn't necessarily align. I just thought it's a nice moment where we get to see Rand being active
Yeah, for
beyond
sure.
just like dragging him, like him making a choice to be like, I'm not going to listen to this authority figure, and I'm still going to help my dad. So I feel like it's a nice, kind of moment for where we get to like Rand. And then also, I think it again shows that he grew up here. You know what I mean? That he has even if he's got his own take on it, a relatively
Yeah.
similar mindset to what's just been espoused.
Right on. So he gets there, and of course, the
Mhm.
Gleeman's hanging out outside. Like, is he
Right.
like smoking or something? I can't remember. But he's like, "Oh, your wisdom will take care of him." And like,
Right.
so again, he's on Team Dark One along with Nynaeve, and kind of giving him BS information, and also being just kind of like I don't know. He seems very casual. There's a few times through this where there's another time even more egregious where he seems like way too casual about what's going on.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that part, which I think is fascinating.
No.
Uh,
Okay, so then also some people freaking vandalize. Even though the town has been attacked, but I guess people are mad because they think
right.
Moraine and Lan
I was gonna
brought
say, did
this.
you look up Dragon's Fang?
I did not. No, I didn't. That's the other thing. I'm probably not going to use like. I
Oh
swear.
no! After all this, after all this. So did I really ruin my facts, or did I just not bother to have a conversation I knew wouldn't matter
Well, that
anyway?
is the other kind of funny thing because there's obviously things that aren't like a lot of things that aren't in that glossary, right? Like every single one of those stories, the thing about Len, going to the stars in the Eagle rocket or whatever is not in there. So then you're kind of like going, well, I have to decide whether something is so significant that it's going to
That I want
make
to
it
break
into
the
the
narrative.
glossary or not. So you're like, you got a little roulette going on there to decide whether that's the case.
Their Dragon's Fang is in the bag.
Right on, right on.
But yeah, so that's the thing too.
Oh,
Like, do you...
I forgot to say this one. There was an amazing one that you,
What?
in a previous video, oh, I got you here. There was a previous video where you said, I think the one thing that Jordan alluded to that you were not happy about was the black veiled Aiel. I got you here, man, because I don't know which video it was, but you were like, I'm here complaining about all the things I don't know. And you're like, the one where I'm like, I feel like this just got dropped was Black Veiled Aiel. And here it is right here that just explains that exact line of the Black Veiled Aiel.
Oh no, totally. I was saying that I thought Jordan was just being a little too heavy-handed, giving us Aiel like back to back a couple times
Back, right.
where we hadn't seen them threaded quite as frequently previously.
Gotcha.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a reason why that phrase exists for sure. It was just like, it felt as if it's kind of what you do as a writer. Sometimes you're like, okay, I'm going to be revealing something in 10 pages, so I got to do a lead up. But it's like, well, maybe you should have been leading up like 20 or 30 pages
right.
before that, right?
And
that's what I was getting at.
And like, honestly, as you're coming up with stuff, you're putting it in. And usually then what you do is you're going back and you're saying like, let me put it in here. I feel that way like with the eyes in that one chapter too, that it just was like, oh, I've kind of thought in my head now he's going to have different color eyes. And then I said it like three times
that's what you were saying
in the
before,
chapter.
like, wait, why are we learning about his eyes like twice when it feels like we haven't heard that before? So that's more what I'm talking about, is more like kind of a moment where like, oh, I'm getting this description a few times and I'm like further into the book, why wasn't it there before? And if it had been a particular person who's always complaining about the Aiel, sure, but it was kind of like a couple people. So, but yeah, I mean, that is also the tricky thing. I mean, this is what makes writing fantasy challenging, I think, because not only do you have to write a compelling story, but you got to figure out how do you realistically put people into a different world. And obviously not everything is different, but in a book like this, a lot of stuff is different. And how do you ease them in, make it feel real, that type of stuff.
All right. Very cool. So, he's there talking to Gleeman and the mayor. And then, again, the Gleeman does a little shot at Team Moraine and Lan.
So what did you think about this part, though? About that he says, like, I was just wondering, like, about where he seems to have an idea for Rand, but then he talks about the Dragon's Fang thing.
Yeah, no, so he's... I mean, I just took it as... this guy's Team Dark One. Like, he's like definitely against Moraine and Lan, and he's just saying, well, this is why they scratched the thing in the door, because they're mad, because they don't like these two people, who I do also don't really seem to like all that much. So that's kind of all I would have took away from it. Maybe I need to read the glossary entry on the Dragon's Fang, and that would give me a bit more.
Well, to me, this is a brilliant bit of character work.
Okay.
Reading this to me, I was like, oh man, I gotta step up some of my characters. Because, well, I'll wait and see if we got anything else for the other page before I say it, because it's more revealed on the next one.
Okay. Yeah, because, I mean, the mayor really comments on this. Rand doesn't. Rand gives him a disgusted look. Then he looks in the fire, and like his thoughts danced like flames, and like the flames, they concentrated fixedly on one thing. Do flames do that? Do flames concentrate fixedly on one thing? My experience with flames is they will burn a lot of things. They will like.
True. I guess in this particular case, they are burning a singular log.
I mean, that's not their choice, though. They're not like, oh, we're gonna concentrate on this.
If they had the option.
Yeah.
They would not be going for that.
Okay, so then,
I think you are primed and ready to write some fire
yeah.
spirits.
Oh, fire spirits.
Stephen,
Okay.
that's what I'm getting out of this conversation. So yeah, I would agree. I was surprised here that Rand's reaction was not more direct, because I do also feel like what Jordan is doing with the Gleeman is brilliant here in a way, but it feels like it's not quite as
Okay, let me
clean.
talk about. Let's talk
Everything.
some more about, because there was, I'm
Mhm.
like hardcore on Gleeman as Team Dark One, as you know.
Sure,
But
sure.
then there was, and all of this is kind of just feeding into that as I'm reading along. But then there was
Mhm.
something else, and I can't even remember what it is. But something else later that he says that makes me think, okay, maybe he's not really on Team Dark One, and I can't remember it for the life of me right now. But I'm sure I have it highlighted. So
Oh,
maybe
well, I
that's
was
what
gonna.
you're referring to, or.
Well, so what I'm referring to is that basically when so if this is another tough thing too we got to consider. So as you said before, instead of Portal Fantasy, what happens in a lot of fantasy like this, where you are just in the world, is you start in a small town, or you start with someone or a group of people who don't know a lot of things,
Right.
right? So we already know from having finished this chapter that Moraine is Aes Sedai, and Aes Sedai have the ability to heal, and there would be stories about this, right? So like, if we've got this person is hurt, the Gleeman would be able to say right away,
Right.
oh, well, there's an Aes Sedai, which was revealed last night when Moraine, shot lightning at Trollocs. Instant solution, right? So there would be no reason for all of this like belaboring of like, what do we do? How do we solve it? Glenn would be like, oh, she's nice to die. Just go see her, right?
Oh, well, yeah,
And
like I
even
didn't buy what you're referring to is this line right
right.
here.
So I'm saying so like that is like supposed to be the reason why he's not just coming out and saying,
But I'll tell you
right?
right now, like I'm not buying that like
Sure,
at all. Or
sure.
at least I wasn't when I read it. I was like, this is the biggest load of BS like I've ever heard in my life. Like I did
Well,
not
so the
believe it.
question is though, is it BS from a like are you saying BS because I don't trust Tom Maryland?
That's my
Or is
initial
it
thing.
BS? Or is it BS like this is poorly written? He would have brought it up beforehand. This is breaking
Uh
immersion,
No, I
right?
don't think it's that it's poorly written. I think like your two possible interpretations here is that this is like an honest thing that he's saying, in which case he's an
Mm-hmm.
idiot, and you're like supposed to be like kind of hate him for being an idiot, or it's
Right,
just a straight up lie.
right.
Where it feels more like, at least when I was reading at this point, it felt more like a straight up lie or an
So,
excuse, at least, that I wasn't buying this excuse.
so the part that I like is that it ties back to something you said, which is a character should never answer another character.
Mm-hmm.
So Rand is like, you've got an idea, you've got a way to save my dad, and he's like, about those people that scroll the Dragon's thing, right? And it's like, well, that's not an answer. What does
Mm-hmm.
that have to do with what I'm talking
Right.
about? And what it ends up having to do is that, well, the people that scroll the Dragon flag are probably these people, the Coplans we've heard about forever, and then we talk about them a little bit. I mean, the reason they might have scrawled the Dragon's Fang is because of the people that Bran is letting stay at the inn. And those people that Bran is letting stay at the inn are Moraine and Lan. And during the Trolloc invasion, we learned that she is an Aes Sedai, so on and so forth. So he's like starting this conversation that will lead to the answer to Rand's question. But it's starting from a very far place. So to me, I thought that was cool from a someone answering a question in a way that's not just an answer to the question. Like this whole 2 pages would have been completely different if the Gleeman just said, "Oh yeah, you can just go ask the Aes Sedai," right? But then that would take away a lot of this tension. And then after this, we then get into like, do we even trust Aes Sedai? They're gifts can be more, and that keeps the tension kind of going. So I feel like there's two important parts to that. But just talk about this first one with the way
Interesting.
I
I
see it.
mean, like, uh, yeah, yeah. So he isn't directly answering. I think
Mm-hmm.
usually when that sort of thing works really well, it works really well because, somebody has their own concerns,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so like when he's like, I'd rather talk about how everybody hates these two people,
Mm-hmm.
that would be because that's what he's interested in, right? I'm not actually interested in your dying dad right now. I'm
Mm-hmm.
interested in, oh, look how everybody hates these people that you brought here. Your thesis to me is that he's talking about that as a way of leading Rand
Mm-hmm.
to the answer. Who's leading Rand to the answer here? Is the Gleeman supposed to be, or is Jordan supposed to be?
The Gleeman is leading Bran to the answer.
Okay, why would he do that?
Well, that's what happens right here, where it says, Gleeman, you should have remembered that better than I. Gleeman's tales are full of Aes Sedai. Why didn't you speak up instead of letting me flail around?
And he gives a terrible answer to that. Like that
And
just
his
this does
reason
not
is,
answer my question of why he did that.
I'm, I'm just saying there is the answer from the
That's
character.
not-
I'm a stranger here, right? And I also want nothing to do with Aes Sedai.
So
That's the
here's
idea
the
came
thing.
from you.
Now, if he's not lying right here, well, if he's leading Rand to the answer, then this isn't a lie, because
Right.
if he didn't want to bring it up because he's really a jerk and he's
Didn't
on
need
Team
to.
Dark One, he wouldn't have led him to the
Right.
answer. So now this makes me, this guy is just a complete idiot. Like why would you go, oh, I want to dole it out to you in these little,
Right.
you know what this reminds me of, Jeff? You might not be aware of this. This was like a meme, an internet meme for one single day that my wife got very upset about, called Bean Dad.
Bean Dad.
Have you heard about Bean Dad?
I got nothing.
So Bean Dad was a dude on the internet who, his kid was hungry. They didn't have any food in the place. He was like, go find some food. His kid, I don't know how old his daughter was, but his kid brought back a can of beans and was like, I don't know how to open these. Right, because it wasn't like a pull tab or whatever. Like you had to break out the can opener and actually open it. And he's like, I'm not going to tell you. I want to teach you this life lesson right now. And I want you to find out on your own how to open these beans. And then he's tweeting about this like all day long. And it's like 8 hours later. The kid is starving. The kid has not figured out how to get into the beans yet. And the internet tore this guy apart. I mean, like, drove him off of Twitter. He, like, had to delete his Twitter account. He had to do all this stuff because he was, like, a jerk. And I feel like then, if this is what the Gleeman is doing, then the Gleeman is being the Bean Dad right here. And he's an idiot and should be shouted off Twitter. Probably would be shouted off Twitter immediately if the Gleeman was on Twitter, let's be real.
I mean, they do get to the answer within 2 pages.
But it's just a
not 8
matter of
hours.
life and death. The dude's dying.
Yeah, but
this is
I
not
was
the
gonna
time
say-
to be coy when the dude is literally dying on the floor.
So now my question is, did you rationalize the Gleeman being evil just because the other possibility
It was
is
so dumb.
weird,
Yes,
you know?
yes. But
Is it like he must be evil and just wants to talk about how people hate on the innkeeper? He couldn't possibly just be
my
holding this
gosh.
information back.
yeah, I am still shocked and appalled. And in fact, now I'm thinking, maybe because I'm taking verbal cues from you, that is the right answer. That he was trying to lead them somewhere like a freaking idiot. But there was another line later on where I was like, oh, maybe the Gleeman is good. And I said, I can't remember it, but I'm sure we'll run into it.
So this has been great. I just want to say, number one.
This has got to be our longest
number-
episode ever, but I don't know what I'm going to cut because it's all gold. It's all gold.
We're just going to have time.
There might have to be part 1, part 2 or something.
Yeah, this is going to be, here's where the chapter actually starts. Number one. But I got to say, first when you brought up Bean Dad, I was skeptical. But I think to a degree, you are right. This is a matter of life and death. And the Gleeman's like, let's talk about that dragon thing. Let's dig into that a little bit.
Bean Dad is going into the description of this video as well. I need to get those clicks, man. I need to get those.
There it is. Cool. So I was just going to say the other sort of cheats that I feel, well not cheats, but I think we get it laid on pretty thick, which could potentially be a reason why um, the Gleeman isn't just straight up saying it,
Mm.
is we then suddenly get Aes Sedai, whoa, they be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be evil for sure, but they're not the good guys. And you do anything for them, that's dangerous.
Right.
Rand wants to
Okay.
like throw the coin out of his pocket like it's a burning coal just to be attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there's all this tension of, are you going to ask one of them for a favor, right? Like, yeah, they could heal your dad, but is it worth it? Kind of thing.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's what we then transition to right next. And so I do feel that does create some support for the Gleeman and not just saying it's straight. Of course, it could be argued the Gleeman would just say, well, I said I could do that for you.
But I don't recommend
Is
it.
it worth it?
Yeah, or something
Right,
like
I
that.
don't recommend it. Like, that's crazy. Yeah.
All right. And then because then look at what Tom says. Besides, boy, what choice do you have? So like, oh, I'm scared of telling you this, but you have no other choice. He's basically saying you gotta go right there.
Yeah, in the back of my head was that line, and then you had it. On the very
I
next
got it right there.
Yeah, I feel like you're getting me more with this one than you got me with the
Right.
with the IEO with the veils. I think I had a good countermeasure.
Yeah,
today
no,
with the
no.
veils. But this one, yeah, why is he gonna play coy if he's just gonna say what choice do you have afterwards? I don't. Some people are weird. People are weird. Steve. People.
That's true. Very true.
People don't always do things. When it's an emergency in the fast way, they do talk around things that maybe they shouldn't.
Mhm.
So I do feel there is a reality to this.
All right. So he goes, they point him in the direction where they're like burning Trollocs over in the fires. And,
Burning
yep,
Trollocs.
and he goes there. And I mean, I didn't have too much more, I don't think, really labeled in here. There's this interesting thing about the bands that
Right.
he's collecting, and there's 7 of them so far. So I don't know exactly what that means, but just I mean, it's a pretty big deal. We get an exclamation point, so like that must be
Yes.
something important. Cool. We'll find out.
What I like is they're doing their own thing. Like they got their own thing going on. Like, yeah, like the people of Evansfield don't know anything about Trollocs or bands or anything. They didn't even know Trollocs are real. But these people, not only know about Trollocs, but they can recognize them enough to know different groups, different bands of them, so on and so forth. So I just feel like it showcases this completely different knowledge set, which is cool.
Oh, I also wanted to bring up on this page like how just straight up racist against Aes Sedai Rand is here.
What? Why do you say that?
And then also there must be something to mark her for what she was. I was like, damn. All right.
Well, I mean, Brandon talked about science. Danger.
But then also more evidence for he has the hots for Moraine. Come on, more than handsome. More than handsome. So
Breakers of the world, puppeteers. So this was what I was talking about, kind of laying it on thick. They're like, do you dare?
Yeah.
Ask something of this.
But that's really funny though. Also, because like as a reader, I don't know. I feel like we're just getting lots of signals, and maybe Jordan's gonna pull the rug out from under me. But there's lots of signals to me that Moraine and Lan are wonderful, are like fantastic, obviously heroes on the side of good in this. I mean, first of all, they trounced all these Trollocs, and so I'm also supposed to believe. I mean, like, this is even so. It's kind of hard for me to think that like Rand is even going like, oh, I've been so affected by all these stories that Aes Sedai are bad all this time that I'm kind of ignoring that I have the hots for her. B, I'm ignoring that they saved the town. According to the mayor, who I really, really trust. And like, definitely as a reader, it's hard for me to get like real invested in the sphere of Moraine, because I'm like, yeah, Moraine rocks. Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I read it on the page that he's scared of Aes Sedai, but it's hard for me to like feel it, based on everything I've been given.
this is what I meant again about the Aiel. Like, I feel like this could have been set up. I feel like we
Mm,
kind of get it sort of shoved very quickly. Be
mm,
like, Aes Sedai, wait, they're crazy. No, they're terrible.
right,
They're
right.
never the heroes of stories. They're, like da da da. Da. Like we get it has to be half a dozen things, if
Right,
not
right.
more, of like reasons why we should be questioning Rey. Um, I will say, as you brought up, Bran does specifically say like, I know Aes Sedai are crazy, but they did really help the town, so
Yeah.
they seem like they could
Yeah,
be
yeah.
good. But yeah, it would have been to me nice if we had gotten some stories about like
Them
Aes
wrecking
Sedai
stuff.
tricking someone
Right.
to, you know, what is it, save their lover, but in doing so, it kills their mother, or like, then they can't be king anymore, or,
Right.
like saved his lover to be the queen, but then lost his kingship, something where you get what you want, but it's not what you want. Because we see that in fairy tales, right? It's a very fairy tale concept of
Hmm.
like, oh, you can get your wishes, but what price will your wishes pay? Like that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so having that sort of seeded throughout could have been pretty cool. But it does feel like it's kind of happening here more at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then just a little bit more indication that like Rand is the golden child because she's like a little bit more light when he shows up. Like she's happy he shows
Right.
up. Like Land doesn't
Right. Right.
really
Right.
give a crap, but she's happy. And how are your dreams? Which is quite a like
Mm-hmm.
first thing to say to somebody. In fact, I think now whenever I meet somebody new, I'm just gonna be like, "How's your dreams?" and just see how they react to that.
And when they tell you, be like, I can help with you.
Yes, yes, I can help with this. And then
Uh,
the last two things besides going to the glossary now in the future is of course there's this price. He's already sold his soul to her by taking that coin, so I don't know why he now is going to be doubly indebted. I feel like don't even worry about it, bro.
doubly
You're already
indebted.
stuck, but
Um, no, I hear that. I do. And so, we are retreading a little bit of it here. I was gonna say that we didn't talk about a lot, but I feel like the reveal, well, how Moraine and Lan are, I think does a lot in a very short amount of time.
mm,
Like we get the sense that, they're companions, they're working towards something. The this sort of respect that Lan has and protectiveness that Lan has for Moraine
mm.
is pretty cool. Like we get to see a lot of what they care about as people through here,
Yeah, I like how she
which I
chides
think
him
is
and stuff. Don't be so gloomy. Yeah,
exactly.
that's
You can tell
cool.
that they like spent time together, right? That he's like this big, incredible warrior, and we get to hear that secondhand, so we believe it because Bran's talking about how amazing a fighter Lan was and everything. And then so I feel like there's just a lot of really great character work
Hmm.
that's going on here in terms of us being interested in Moraine and Lan and spending more time with them and figuring out who they are and Rand getting to spend time with them. So yeah, even if you're worried that Moraine may have this price for Rand, we're eager for him to pay it, I feel like. We're eager for him to spend more time with these people that know the world, I would say, as a reader. So I feel like this is almost faux concern, because we want it to all happen. But I think it does add something to the narrative. It's fun to see Rand stressed about something else too,
Hmm.
beyond just being like, I want to save my dad. Like, why have just that one note when you can have both? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I like it.
Mhm.
So then we just got to find out whether she's going to be able to pull it off. Next
Right?
chapter, I mean, come on, she's Moraine. She's amazing.
You think she's got
She's
this?
amazing. She's got this in the bag. That's my prediction.
Cool. Cool. Well, we shall find out in our next
Hopefully,
video.
the glossary won't tell me when I go look up Angreal.
Don't trust a glossary, Steve. Don't trust it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time.
See you next time.